Please welcome Hanin Elias.
Thank you.
While we were watching this video, you said this was me running up and down dunes for hours. Which countries' dunes were those?
So this was in the Sahara in Morocco, and actually I wanted to represent the situation in Syria and Iraq with the people that are fleeing from ISIS, and so I represented actually a woman that is escaping from this and coming here as a refugee. So I hope that's clear. Actually, I had the idea of sitting on a camel and trying to hit someone with a bow, like a terrorist guy, and he will transform into a squirrel. But the guys who made the video said it's maybe too intense and could cause trouble. So
I can totally imagine it now. What is your connection to Syria?
yeah, my father is Syrian from Damascus, and my mother German. And I grew up in Syria as well and went there to kindergarten as a child. And then my father decided that we moved to Germany, and then I grew up in Germany with my 3 brothers. And but we always went there to visit family members, and so I have a very tight relationship to Syria still. And I also went there last year in April and the year before in September to see what the situation is like, because the media here doesn't really represent the full picture of what's happening in Syria.
These years that you spent as a child in Germany after you came back from Damascus, you spent in West Germany, right?
Yes.
How was your experience of being a half Syrian child in Germany? Did people make you feel foreign?
My mom, she's from Western Germany, and there was a very small village that I grew up, and I was the only one with a foreign name, for example. So people started making fun of my name and pronouncing it in a very ugly way. But I got used to it. And but I think what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And
what is your own favorite way of pronouncing your name?
Hanin.
Hanin.
There are 3 H in the Arabic language, and one is Ha, the other is Ha, and the other is Ha. And mine is the second, Hanin, and it means yearning and nostalgia in Arabic. So if English people or German people say Hanin or Hanin, it's like raping my name.
I apologize for introducing you the wrong way. Specifically because
fine.
I'm called Hannah, and then people say Hannah, and it also upsets me.
We have similar names.
But I imagine you as a teenager in a smaller West German.
With
town.
10 years, I came to Berlin with my parents.
Right.
So only in my childhood, I was living in Germany, Western Germany.
That must have been so early 80s. When did you first start experiencing Berlin as a cultural city? When did you get in touch with its music scene then?
That was pretty early, because my father always took me to Kudam and I saw punks, and I always said to my dad, I want to look like them. And he said, no, don't. And it's in the early time I was also interested in music, especially in the 80s when I was 10, 11 years old. I already had like a Ideal tape, and I really liked the new wave gothic kind of music, which was and with 15 I ran away from home because my father started oppressing me, and he wanted me to stay home all the time, and because I was becoming a woman, and his Arabic roots came out all of a sudden, treating me differently to my 3 brothers. And then I started the riot and ran away and lived with punks and squats. Made music because my parents didn't want to send me money and support my lifestyle. So I actually had to beg people at the U-Bahn for money, and I always had this thing that I was like, hey, can you give me a Deutschmark? Because there's only one Deutschmark missing until I can buy myself a ghetto blaster. So people gave me, oh yeah, of course, I want to help this girl to get a ghetto blaster. So I survived like this, and then I was singing with my tape recorder at the U-Bahn, and to Madonna's Get Into the Groove and some kind of like strange opera, noisy stuff, like singing very loud. And then I got discovered by a friend, Captain SpaceX. He saw me singing in the U-Bahn and he said, "You're so crazy. You must be. Let's form a band together." And that was with already in my late 15s. So
late 15s.
Yeah, I was nearly 16. So yeah, and then we started making music with tape machines and scratching with broken tape recorders, and we didn't have lots of money, so we just improvised with broken electronic devices, and it was fun. It was like a psychedelic breakbeat noise guitar thing.
You're describing this kind of like almost in a joyous way, but was it tough living in squats? Were you, I mean, did it scare you? Did it upset you? Or was it overall a time where you felt just safe?
No, I felt really free because my dad was trying to, how do you say, house arrest? I got house arrest all the time because I did something. So my father said, "Oh, now you stay 2 weeks in the house and you can't go out with your friends." And so I always escaped through the cellar and out of my window. And I was unstoppable at that time. I really wanted to go out and I wanted to be free. And it felt good to be living in squats, but it was hard sometimes. One day we slept with 8 people in a squat, and it was winter, and there was a toilet outside of the apartment. So I needed to pee urgently, but I didn't want to get up, so I peed in an orange juice bottle that was standing next to me. And in the morning, the girl next to me, she was like, "Oh my God, I'm so thirsty." And you can imagine what happened. And I didn't say anything, and she didn't realize. So until today, she doesn't know what she actually drank. It's horrible. But I mean, we had fun times, we had horrible times. It was weird. And also, I lived in a squat called Rauchhaus.
Where was that?
That was at the Bethanien. It's called now the Bethanien. And my door was broken in, so people could just come in and go up. I couldn't lock it. So people came, "Hey, have you seen my rat? My rat just escaped," and stuff like that. That was the late 80s in Berlin. It was pretty cool, actually. Yeah. So we made music. We lived in squats, but I never dressed really like a punk. I always had this end of 70s kind of dressing style, and people always, the punks were also very square. They were like, "Oh, look how you look like a secretary," or some kind of like. So I never really felt 100% punk, because they are also very square. So, and yeah.
So when the wall came down, you weren't 18 yet, or you were just about...
Oh, before
18.
that, apropos wall, there was the Linné-Dreieck, and we were squatting there.
What is the Linné-Dreieck?
Linné-Dreieck is where now is the Potsdamer Platz, and people were protesting there and building their own houses and having tents and everything. We stayed there for weeks, and then the police came. It was right next to the wall back in the days. Now it's the Potsdamer Platz. You can't even imagine how it looked back in the days. And then the police came to free the country from us. And we were protesting against the Autobahn that was planned there. And then we got sprayed with lots of Tränengas. Tear gas and water. It was very strong and horrible. And so we climbed over the wall, and the East Berlin Fopos, they welcomed us and gave us cheese bread and coffee and let us out, and towels, of course, to dry. And then we went back. So we were actually, as I can recall, the only people who fled over the wall, but into East Berlin. It was crazy times.
Was that your only contact with the East German police? I mean, that sounds like such a unique incident.
It is a unique incident, and if you go on YouTube, there's very rare material from VHS still that shows the situation, how people really climbed over the wall into the east and then came out later on. Was really funny. I mean, it's a unique experience, so to climb over the wall in the other direction, totally.
And during all this time, sort of the main creative outlet for yourself was music, or was there also, were you involved in any sort of performance, dance, making clothes, etc.?
Making clothes, not so much, no. No.
Because I imagine music. I mean,
I always liked to write. I liked to write my lyrics and my thoughts. And back in the days, my English wasn't that good. It's still... I always like to express myself through music and lyrics very much. Yeah.
I'm asking because you just said that you look different, and I think even for people who have never heard your music or can't consciously remember your music, a lot of people know your look. But that just came. You always had a specific kind of style and just developed it from there. I mean, it's also very.
I think I liked it simple. I liked just like simple dresses and just no shishi stuff, and because it's timeless, I think. And I always liked the style of the 40s and 50s, which I mean, it's not very punk rock, but I think punk is a state of mind and not a look, basically.
From performing in sort of like U-Bahn stations, I assume there were venues and squads as well. What were early venues that you played at?
Early venues would be places like Eimer. Like after the wall came down, there were lots of places in Mitte and Prenzlauer Berg. Like
Eimer was a squad too, right?
Eimer was a total squad, yeah. Eimer and what's the other name of the places? Yeah, I can't even recall the names.
Long Gun, Mitte squads.
Exactly, places with no names at all. I mean, and back in the days we didn't had internet. There were just flyers made and spread. But the parties were so crowded, and nowadays you have Facebook and all the event pages, and then sometimes it's so much that you don't even want to go out because there's so much choice and you can't decide where you go. And it was all mouth to mouth, and people went into squatted closed U-Bahn stations and had a party there just with ghetto blasters. And
U-Bahn stations that were closed because of the way that the city geography shifted after the wall came down?
Exactly, yeah.
And did you have any possibility back then already to record, or was it mostly you, like the Broken Machines, the two of you, or
yeah,
you
we
solo?
had an 8-track with Captain SpaceX, and we recorded, but it was sounding really bad. I mean, there was no no mastering or anything. It sounded very lo-fi, and we also made theater plays, and our band was called Aluminia. And I was dressed in a space kind of suits, and we looked like we are from another planet, basically. Very funny look.
It must have been during that time that you first met Alec Empire, right?
Yeah, I met a friend of him at a dance marathon of Radio 4U. So I was like dancing to early techno stuff and try to win the dance marathon because you could win some money, and I always needed some money back in the day, so I thought I can do it. I like to dance. So, and then this guy just talked to me and said, hey, let's hang out. And through him I met Alec, And then Alec and me started talking about music, and he asked me if I can sing a song with him for his band Die Kinder, which was his old punk band with, and I sang Identity with them, and that's how it started actually. And then we decided to form a band. I mean, he said he recruited the band members, but it didn't felt like that for me. So for me, it was like, okay, we're gonna form a band and let's see what's happening. And then it was him and me, and we also played at the Techno festivals. We had several projects.
For people who don't know the Techno Festival,
Techno Festival was one of the first techno festivals, like Tanit and people like that. We really admired his hard style of DJing techno stuff, and also we liked break beats, and we had this performance at Techno instrumental mostly. And the music developed. First we had break beats with him playing the Gibson guitar, and me singing whatever came into my mind. And then it developed slowly that we had a strategy, and we wanted to become political with the music that we did.
This urge to become political was one, I mean, it sounds like you had been political the years before as well. Was there anything specific that happened that triggered you and Alex saying, we're going to be political in our music?
Yeah, we saw after the wall came down, it was not only fun and love and peace and unity. I mean, the new unity that developed was like a German unity. And then all of a sudden, the new scapegoat was foreigners and people who were in refugee camps. And these camps were all of a sudden set on fire. And you heard more and more of these stories that people were set on fire, refugees. And so that was the negative aspect of the German unity. And I always was political, and I really didn't just want to make music and for the fun, because I always had this mission inside of me that I want to change things. And so, yeah, I mean, like I ran away from my dad and told him, fuck you. I mean, now we get along very well. He accepts me the way I am, so sorry, daddy. And yeah, I was always like against something. I had this very strong feeling of justice and wanted to make things right.
There was at the same time, though, a kind of scene going on in Berlin that was not so much about conflict, but about unity and love, etc. These early years of the Love Parade, or maybe the early years were more angry. So were you opposed to that, or did you know?
Not in the beginning. In the beginning, it was a cool energy, but I always thought, but this is so boring. There are not really vocals in there. There's not really a message in there. It's just like, it feels like everyone's doing the same marching thing and tries to forget all the stress at work and just letting go of things, and it was empty after a while. So I thought, hey, why not? And Alec, of course, too. So we were like, okay, let's have lyrics, let's have a message, and use the same equipment, but make it more dirty and not as clean. And because the direction was more and more getting the sound very clear and very clean, and the nice thing of the beginning of the techno era was the dirtiness of the places. You know, sometimes it was dripping from the roofs. We were all standing in water, but because of the dancing, you felt warm, and you know, it was kind of rotten, and that energy was very cool and punk rock. So
you should maybe
play something.
You had a lot of fun.
Yeah, we did. And this was actually filmed in the club that we owned. It was the Suicide Club.
Wait, you own Suicide?
With a friend, yeah, Roland Braun, back in the days, yeah, and Ralf Brendeler. And Brendeler took over the club later on and turned it into Suicide Circus, and he has now this techno club. But in the beginning, it was our club, and we had the bass terror parties, and we wanted to have all like DHR sounds there, and yeah, it was cool. So yeah, as you can see, we used guitars, which pissed off the techno scene, and the whole crossover thing wasn't very welcome in Germany, and also the messages. So there was a divide. We liked some of the stuff they did, but they were like totally conform about their music, and so people in the States were very open-minded, and so we were more successful overseas than actually in Germany and Berlin.
Because as this video says, that was already when you were already signed to Grand Royal, which is
that was it?
Well, I think that's how the video was sort of tagged, but maybe the recording was before that.
Yeah.
But well, what happened is that you got signed by a really big label in the US.
Mm-hmm.
How did the years before that unfold? So from you meeting Alec Empire and then he recruiting you, or you founding
exactly.
the band.
Yeah. So we started making this kind of stuff like with guitar samples, and then we had Carl. Carl was there already as well. And Carl Crack, yeah, our MC.
Yeah.
And we had shows in Berlin and in German clubs, very underground. And then a friend of ours, Philip Virus, who also made this video and most of our videos, had a sister who was with an American guy, and she was in the music scene, and she's now married to Jay Mascis from Dinosaur Jr. And so the Beastie Boys discovered us through her and through Philip. So and they wanted to sign us, and then we toured in the States and had success over there.
And in Japan.
And we toured the Big Day Out, and we toured with Wu-Tang Clan, Rage Against the Machine, people like that. It was fun times.
How do you, what you said earlier, the political angle that you had, or the political message, that was a lot about how Germany evolved, or the problems that occurred in Germany after the reunification. How did you feel like that translated to an international audience?
I don't know. I mean, we had lots of lyrics that are about starting a riot and anti-government, and also death of a president, DIY. And if you listen to the lyrics now, it's like prophetic. Everything that we were singing about, the whole terror thing, wasn't happening back in the days. That was in the 90s. But it's happening now. It all came true. So it's kind of, we foresaw the future in a way. And lots of people didn't only project it on the German cause, because it was happening globally and worldwide. And the dangers were all there for people to see. I mean, there wasn't the possibility to check everything on the internet like nowadays. But if you would have your sensors out, you could already feel that it was going into a direction of more monopoles and lobbying and bankers taking over, politicians trying to have their economy stocked up on the cost of foreign countries and stuff like that. So, and there was a huge millions of people were protesting against the Iraq war, but it didn't change anything. So that was like panicking us. You know, we wanted to speak to the people and wake them up, and we also used the right frequencies for that, because mostly people get very, you know, relax, you know, watch TV, don't worry, you know, everything was like that. And our frequencies were like, wake up! Like in this film Network, you know, have you seen it? Network? It's a cool film from the 70s.
All right, everyone, cool film from the 70s.
It is.
Watch it.
Network.
I don't, unfortunately. But this, so you had a vision of more justice and equality for the world, but how?
Yeah, but also to get the people away from this passiveness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How much justice and equality was in Atari Teenage Riot, though?
Yeah, well, it started very well, and then after a while, it didn't feel like a equal band situation anymore. So I decided to leave and do my own thing after Carl Craig committed suicide. And he committed suicide a few weeks before September 11th happened. And that was the end of an era.
And at this point, it had been you, Alec, Carl, and Nick Endo in the band.
And Nick Endo, exactly. She joined later the band and took over the singing part now.
But you did not leave because of Carl's death. You left because
that was one reason why I left, because I thought it's not going to be the same anymore. But also there were tensions. I was pregnant twice during the whole Atari thing, so I was mostly in the tour bus with a big belly, and most of the video clips of Atari I was pregnant. I had my two kids who are now 20 and 17 while I was with Atari Teenage Riot. And you can imagine, I mean, that it was very exhausting as well, like to always jump and scream. And I mean, it's great, but I remember we were on tour with 9 Inch Nails, and Trent Reznor told me, "Hey, Hanin, I know you are in the 7th month now, and why don't you give birth to your child at my house, and then we can continue the tour." And I'm like, all right, what are you talking about, you know? And I knew that he had this, the door was from the Charles Manson massacre when they killed Sharon Tate. And he bought this door in an auction and had it built into his house. So I was like, no, maybe it's not a good omen. You know, who knows what this guy, you know, you never know. People are crazy. And so I decided not to do it, which was a good idea, because it was a very difficult birth. And it was always like that. People seem to ignore that, you know, I need special treatment in a way, you know, and it wasn't appreciated that I was pregnant, and also I got discriminated. Oh yeah, you're getting fatter and fatter. It's not so cool, you know. So I felt like, shit. It feels like I'm in this commercial band that I never wanted to be in, and guys treated me just like I guess Kylie Minogue is getting treated from her label people when they tell her, oh no, you need to change your look, you can't go on like this. So it was kind of the same, and I didn't feel good anymore. And also I had signed some contracts in a hurry that actually made sure that I wasn't a part of the band anymore, and that Alec was the only one deciding what's happening. So it didn't feel like a democracy or something at all. And I decided to leave.
So there's no GEMA millions that are pouring in each time someone plays Deutschland has got to die. You get 10 cents.
something like that. Not even 10 cents.
But did you co-own Digital Hardcore Recordings, DHR, the label?
No, I had a sub-label. I had a sub-label, Fatal Recordings, but I didn't owe it. So later on, I reformed the label outside of DHR and called it Fatal Recordings.
Let's maybe listen to a track of Future Noir, which is your record that came out in 2004, which is sort of after that was already
exactly my solo stuff, yeah.
Over.
Da hast du dir ja echt einen traurigen Song ausgesucht von mir. Aber das war auch echt so die Zeit, wo ich dachte,
Should we switch back to English?
Okay, sorry.
Like
you
German sitting on it.
You chose a song, a very sad song of mine, but that was really a phase of my life when I was really down. And I found this guy Tweaker Ray, who came and jumped on stage when I was playing in Hamburg for my solo stuff. And then later on, we talked, and he played me his demo tape. And I found his music so beautiful that I asked him, hey, don't you want to produce my next album? And we can sit together and write songs together. And because and we did. So with him, I produced a Future Noir album, which
that song also had Thurston Moore on guitar, right?
Exactly, yeah. Thurston Moore, I met also through Philip Virus's sister, and I went to Amherst, where Jay Mascis and Thurston Moore lived as neighbors. And I hung out with Jay and Thurston Moore, and we jammed. And that's how the Thurston Moore guitar came onto the song, yeah.
And this came out on your own label, on
Yes.
Fatal,
Yes.
where you were only releasing female identifying artists.
Yeah, or guys who identified with female people being what they are.
Allies, sort of.
Exactly, yeah. Because at first I thought, okay, only female musicians doing electronic music their way, you know, not as dogmatic as the guys, like talking about equipment all the time and being very important. And so I formed this label, Fatal Recordings, and I had great bands. Like, girls were just sending me tons of stuff, very different, crazy sounds and lots of energy. It was very inspirational, but it wasn't a commercial success at the end. And at that, yeah, I mean, the Future Noir album was the most important album for me to break free from DHR and from the bondage contract. And this song actually represents that I was actually put on ice because I couldn't find another label, and because I was still in a contract with them, which was prolonged for longer even, and so I could only get it out through my own label.
How did you survive these years in a financial way after Atari?
I had a husband, luckily, who was selling architectural antiques. He also had his own business. Like he was collecting furniture after the wall came down, and then he, like people threw stuff out and just put it in front of his house, in their houses, and he just collected everything. And by now, he's one of the most important collectors from these architectural antiques, like old tiles and doors and stuff like that. And even people like George Clooney and Tom Cruise go to him when they make a film in Germany to get these old original architectural antiques to, yeah.
But you were also involved in running a gallery, is that right?
Yes, Galerie Elias. And we had like special pieces from the architectural antiques that were too good to just sell them over there. He had an old pig farm that he transformed into a warehouse for his stuff. And then we had this gallery. Yeah.
How did you like to be in that kind of scene in the art world compared to your teenage years in squats?
It wasn't really a scene of art lovers. It was more a scene of people who like nostalgic stuff, because it was like these old rotten things, and it had more to do with my time as a new wave goth. It was like these beautiful graveyard figures, for example, and I could totally identify with that nostalgic these nostalgic pieces. I love that.
Fatal Recording being this mostly female artist label, and you having had given birth in the 90s as a musician, were there many women you could talk to about this experience?
No.
in Germany?
I was only 24 when I had my son, and everyone else was too busy with themselves, and they weren't interested in kids. So I didn't really had friends, and especially from the music scene, who could identify with that.
You said it was feels like there's quite some, specifically from Berlin, there are quite some women organizations or groups of women who are only releasing music by female artists, or who are, from networks such as Female Pressure, and I'm talking about labels such as Monica. Were you in touch with them at all?
No, not really. That came later, that they were interested, and I think I'm also on a compilation of Female Pressure. But not really directly in contact. We had our own scene, and it was an international scene. And bands like Fallos über alles, Kunst, and Lolita Storm, people from all over the world actually sent us stuff, and we organized concerts for them to play. Jessie Evans, for example, she moved to Berlin because of that, and we had our own scene.
And in this scene, there were quite, or at least to me, it always felt like there were a few younger musicians who did their thing, sort of knowing that someone like you had done things before, such as Gina Dorio, for example.
Yeah.
Who must have been a friend at that time.
Yes, we were touring together. We were in the tour bus all the time, making jokes and fun, and Gina and Patrick, they had this band Ikata, so they were on DHR. And it's cool.
After you did the gallery and then you did the Future Noir album, your life kind of moved away from music, but also geographically away from Europe, right? What happened?
Yes, so in this gallery, I sold this Pan, like a nature god, bronze. And so I had some money to take a trip to French Polynesia, which I always wanted to see, because I read this book about kahuna magic and like some weird stuff. And so I got interested in French Polynesia. And I flew there alone, left the kids and my husband, and landed on this island, this beautiful island, Huahine. And when I landed, I thought like, oh my God, this is my home. I always, I felt like I'm at a place where I can totally relate to. It was humid, it was sensual. The colors were like, all of a sudden somebody had to switched on Technicolor in my life of gray Berlin sky and everything. The sea was so amazingly turquoise and blue and, shades of green and gold, and it was so beautiful. And the thing was that I, in the last week of my stay there, I fell in love with some fishermen on the island. And yeah, and then when I came back to Berlin, I told my husband, well, I'm so sorry, but I totally fell in love, and I think I have to, after 11 years of marriage, have to go there and live there. And but he was very cool about it. He said, well, thank you for the 11 years you spent with me. And he was always so open-minded, and we're still like best friends. I mean, so I took the kids to the island and moved there with that fisherman who was also a policeman on the island, and they had like only 5 policemen on the island from the Tahitian police, and they had these sexy uniforms, like short pants, and then the tattoo would stick out, you know, and they didn't have guns or anything, and the Tahitian policemen were only responsible for the Tahitian people because they hate the French, the gendarmes, so they didn't want to have any business with them. And if there's something happening in French Polynesia, like family arguing or whatever, then only the Mutoi, the Polynesian police, goes there and takes care of it. So I moved in with him. He had a self-built house of little, you know, was fun living in this improvised house. You couldn't lock the doors, and we had a chicken in the cupboard, like laying eggs. And so every morning you could look, okay, we have some fresh eggs. The chicken was there. It was so cute. And for me it was really nice because I always lived in this, you know, aggressive kind of environment, like always being against things. And
yeah, I have quite a few videos of you screaming "fuck the police" on trucks.
I was so
then you were with
angry,
the policeman,
you know, and so anti. And I think it was very soothing and calming, and it totally changed me to live on the island and just have this relaxed lifestyle. And was also important for the kids. I mean, the kids were kind of hyper active a little bit, you know, because they're city kids and they always need entertainment and Game Boy and everything. And after a while, you know, we didn't had any television whenever it was raining. And then the kids just calmed down. They were, becoming more happy with like having a plastic bag and sliding down the mud hills and playing with marbles and going fishing. It totally turned them into very patient, quiet, calm, nice human beings, which they still profit from now that they're back in Berlin. Yeah, it was a big change of life. And I went fishing with a spear gun and hunting for my breakfast and planting vanilla and papaya and uru. You know, uru is the breadfruit. Which caused the mutiny of the Bounty back in the days. And that's very delicious stuff too. Yeah, and I love Polynesian people. They are have this kind of like rudeness, very honest, and they look at you, but they really, really look at you. And there's this, so I learned French there, and this guy I was with only spoke Tahitian and a little bit of French. So in the beginning, it was a Tarzan and Jane situation, you know. But it was great. I mean, after 5 years, I came back, and that was a very horrible time because I had to start from zero again. But yeah.
But your journey kind of went through, at least in a creative way, through Latin America and through, I think, Chile specifically, Argentina, because you were collaborating when you were living in French Polynesia. You were collaborating with lots of Latin American artists.
So I had some fans in Chile who listened to our music when they were 12, and now they were older, and they were like, Hanin, you can't stop making music, and you're on this island now, and is everything over? You have to continue making music. Please don't stop, and please come to Chile, and we send you a ticket, and we organize a tour for you. And I'm like, what? Okay. So I decided to go to Chile play some shows and also record some tracks with this guy Diego Sagredo from Chile. And he organized also some other trips, like gigs in Argentina and Brazil and Peru. And that was cool. So I started making music again and made some songs for the Get It Back album.
Should we listen to Get It Back, maybe, the track? This is also you getting back to
Get It Back, but that song I made with Marcel Zürcher.
Who became your partner in Phantom.
Exactly. So with Marcel, who was my first my drummer, then my guitarist for the live stuff, I made this track, which also, it's a collaboration. I love collaborations because then, other people give other ideas. And he comes from an industrial background, and you don't hear that in the stuff we make together. Not at all, I think.
But this is sort of picking up where you left a bit with Atari, because you got back into
some songs,
rapping.
Because the influence is there, and but it's more dance, was more in this kind of like hip hop direction. But I'm not a hip hopper, so something else came out of it.
But where do you nowadays find the anger to perform such lyrics? Or is it a very different kind of anger?
I mean, I'm angry every day when I look at what's happening in the political world, and that's where I always got my anger from. I think I got this from my father. He was always watching TV and shouting at the television, and I always found that very annoying, but now I took over the part. It's like, it's horrible what's happening politically. The foreign politics of the US and the Western countries and the NATO countries are just like, you can't just be calm, or you had too much Kool-Aid if you're too calm, which I didn't. So
you made an anthem for Syria called Kraken.
Yeah.
And you're also involved in a film called Kraken, which is going to come out sort of in a few months, right? Kind of soon, by a guy called Christopher Canal. I still don't really understand how the anthem for Syria that you made is related to this movie filmed in Iceland of the same name.
The movie was filmed in Iceland, and Christopher Canal asked me to make film music for before he asked me to play a role in the movie. So Romain and me, Romain Frequency, also known as Electrosexual, we made the song. But when I was making the song and we knew it's for the film, I also thought this melancholic vibe also represents my my sadness for Syria. So it's kind of like a double song. It fits very well with the Kraken film, has this icy feeling of elves, but on the other side it's also this melancholic feeling I have when I think of Syria, the Syria from my childhood. And so why not use it in a double sense?
All right, we're going to listen to a minute of your Kraken anthem for Syria, and then if there are any questions in the room, please feel free to
think
music. About them now.
Yeah.
So this was Kraken, and it's also out on your newest EP, right? This is
yes, Hold Me EP. And there's also a song, the main song of the EP, Hold Me. And in the video, a guy who I met while shooting the film Kraken in Iceland, and he made camera for this film, and he offered me to make a video. And because Thomas Le Marquis, the actor who also played in Blade Runner and X-Men and Icebreaker, owed him something, he plays in my video and runs around naked in the snow, which was really funny, I think, and cool.
I suggest we watch that video in the very end, but before that, please, if there are any questions.
Yeah, ask me, please. Don't be shy.
You said early, you went back to Syria after 18 years, right? And have dabbled a bit in journalism. So you've interviewed a few people.
Yes, it was a spontaneous thing, actually, that I started interviewing people with my phone. And because I wanted to... it was very, so there was this big media thing about Syria, people in Aleppo, and Aleppo is burning. So I have family in Aleppo. And they always told me a different story. And they lived in West Aleppo. So it's what people here would call the government-held area or the regime area. And my family is from a Christian minority. So they live in West Aleppo, and they always got targeted by mortar shells and other shellings, self-made ugly bombs. And so they saw people dying every day, but nobody ever reported about them. So I went there, I talked to people. I even offered to go into a talk show with Anne Will to talk about the other side of the story, which is actually the bigger part of the population who lives in the other areas. So, and since Aleppo now is liberated, as I say it, because now 800,000 people came back to that area in East Aleppo, where everybody here was reporting Aleppo is burning and stuff like that. So now people are coming back, but nobody reports about that. So it's a very difficult situation, and I wanted to go there and see for myself, because I didn't see anyone in the media reporting about this properly, and was very biased and one-sided. And of course, that's a geopolitical move. Yeah, and I don't support that.